Hey guys, it's Baba and I'm back with another tutorial. And in this one we're going to be having a look at how I simplify the muscles down to be able to draw them quicker in my figure drawing. So the first thing we're going to do is go and draw from some of these references that we've got. I'm going to do one for the front, one for the back, one for the arms and one for the legs. I'm going to be drawing them all full body, but I've picked specific poses and angles for those traits. I'm going to be doing those all in real time as well so that you guys can see my process, and I'm also going to be doing them all with male figures so that the muscles are a bit more defined and easier to see. Then for each of those we're going to go and do some extra little diagrams just so I can explain how I'm putting them together, why there are curves, where there are curves, and how I draw them simplified and quickly. This tutorial is also sponsored by a site called FlGURE, which is a figure drawing site that uses 3D models. And in the tutorial we'll be using the rotatable models in the nude and muscle versions. Speaking of which, this is a figure drawing tutorial, so there will be models that are in the nip. If you guys aren't too familiar with basic figure drawing or any of the muscles that I'm going to be talking about in this, it might be a better idea to go and watch my other video on muscles and bone structure first, which I will put a link to now. Before you start the video as well, there will also be a link down in the description for the page for this tutorial on FlGURE, which will have all of the resources of everything that I've drawn in this tutorial, as well as this sheet of figure drawings that I've done, if you guys want to have all of that available before you start so you can draw along with me. It should also have links to the specific poses and models that I'll be using. So let's get started, here we go! Okay, so let's start off with this fella. Now I'm going to be doing them live and show you guys how I go about it, and then I'll be going through my sort of process and kind of breaking it down a little bit so that it's easier for you to understand. So I'm going to put his face in there like that. We're going to make sure that that angle is where I want it to be. Then I'm going to draw his neck in. That's going to come down this way and start by chunking in this angle here that we've got for his shoulders. Coming across that way. I'm going to bring this down to a big chunk like that. I'm going to go and bring his collarbones down like this. I'm going to pull his midline down here so that it starts to get a bit easier to see. Chunk is, I'm going to indicate just the bottom of his pecs there and where this is going to pull down here, and we're going to get that little bit of a curve that he's got in the way that he's moving. We've also got this angle here going across this way where his hips are, so I'm going to sketch that in. I'm going to pull that down and indicate that around here. Pull that down, and we're going to turn this into a bit more of a block around his hips like this, where his butt's going to be. Side there, pull that down this way. Give him his leg right here, give him a bit of a knee, so around here and down. Foot at the bottom too. Shape here where his legs kind of join up there, and I can pull it down this way. I'm going to put his hand in right here. I know that's where it's going to be going to. His elbow is going to come up to around there, so I'm going to draw that in. We've also got a really nice line that kind of follows through from that elbow to the other one, so I'm going to draw that line in too, and then I can go and start putting in deltoids up here, pull his arm up through by here, that, and his forearm as well. This, and then bring his other one down like this. Make sure he's got his deltoid in there too, and the way that that scoops around underneath. I'm going to put a little bit more detail into his pecs and onto the top of him. Everyone wants to be a little bit wider around there. So on the back of his arm, as it comes around and back there. And then just sort out all these little creases in between abdominal muscles. Pull that shape down this way. Down there. I'm also just going to tidy that leg up a bit. I did that kind of quick. Did that one kind of quick. Let's just sort that out, fixing those angles and redoing it. And bringing this bit a little bit behind that there. As it should be. Like that. There we go. Okay, so I've got my figure drawing of him done. So now let's go and break it down and let me explain exactly my kind of thought process as I've been going through this. So you might have noticed when I started to do his chest area around here, what I've done is kind of blocked it out just into a big kind of ball like this, instead of doing what I've done in my other videos, which is go and plonk in sort of a rib cage that's more of an egg shape like this, and then bring it up the arch on the inside of it like that. Now you can see I still have gone and indicated that on this in this arch around here like that, and it might kind of look like I've completely changed from one shape to another, from going from this ribcage shape to more of a kind of ball shape around here. But the thing is, I'm actually kind of using both to start it off and kind of keep it a little bit more simple. If I look at the reference over here and just zoom in a bit, you can see that we've got the trapezius up here and the way that comes down from the neck, and how when we've got the rest of this bulk around the side, it all kind of turns into a big circular shape. So all of this can be simplified down just into that kind of shape, rather than going and, you know, drawing in the rib cage like this and then going and adding everything around it later. It just reduces it to sort of one indication of a shape, rather than drawing the rib cage and then the rest of the stuff over the top of it. But as I say, when I am doing that, I'm also looking for where is the rib cage on the inside of that. So I know that it starts off up here, I know that it comes down this way, like this, and you can see that I'm indicating it just with this little bump here, where it drops off and goes into the squidgier centre, and you can see that here, just in that little dent there, and also over this side where it goes outwards and then inwards, where the rib cage drops off. And this can help quite a lot, especially on bulkier figures. So you start off with a kind of round shape like this, bring it down to where the bottom of the rib cage would be, and then I know that the rib cage is inside of that, but I've also got my trapezius here at that point that's going to come down from the neck like that, and then I can go and add everything else onto the top like so. And if I want to go and add a little bit extra like that around the edges, then all I need to do is go and wrap it around. I can do my little drop off from the edge of where the rib cage is, and then pull it down and into where we get these flank pads coming around just by above the hips like that. I wouldn't say this is best in all cases though, because if I go and just redraw him quite quickly, just do this, his face on, bring his neck down here again. If I go and draw his chest in again like this, I'm going to draw it in with a big circle again like this to make it a bit easier. His rib cage kind of inside of that there, like that. Then if I want to raise his arm up a little bit higher, say let's have it going like up this way, then what I'm going to want to do, let's do it on the other one too. What I'm going to want to do is pull that trapezius up even more, so it's not always going to sit just along this curve that you've put down. It might do in some cases, like in this, where he's kind of got it tensed a little bit, so it's sitting a little bit lower and his arms aren't really raised up too far. But if you bring your arms up further and it kind of squeezes down or squeezes up like that, as your arms go up, then you're going to want to pull it up a little bit higher, so it's not going to be the same as that in every case. Get a little bit more chunk around there. Drop off this tongue. Let's just go and draw a little bit of this other arm in. That. It's going to scrunch up a little bit more as those arms pull upwards, as are those collarbones. So just be aware, and this is also why I kind of sketch it in quite lightly like that, so that when I do go and actually define around the edges of those muscles, then it's sort of extra lines that I'm going and putting on around everything, kind of around the edges like this, so that I'm not just sticking to a big circle, that I'm actually going and defining the muscles that are there. Okay, so now that I've moved those out of the way, let's have a look at the pecs here. Now, something that I like to do occasionally is to say I've gone and defined my shape like this. I've drawn it in as the kind of circle for his chest and everything, and around the trapezius, stick his neck in like that. We've got that curve just around there. Now we're going to have the shape here with the deltoids that are going to come out like this, and what I've done on other versions is to either block it in as this kind of shape so that it curves around and we can kind of see the shape of it. But I don't want to be going and kind of cutting into the shape like that when I'm doing things that are a bit more detailed like this. So, you know, I can go and do that and kind of also join it up with the pecs like this and split them down the middle, and also indicate this divot down there like that. Let's go and add in those two. I can do it like that if I want to. But what I could also do, if I just draw another one, stick the neck on again, is to kind of keep them a little bit more separate, which is what I like to do occasionally. So, like I say, we get this kind of divot between them because we don't want them to merge into each other too much like this, like when we're doing ones that are a lot simpler. So what I'll do is kind of block them out into the angle that they have like that, and I will let them hang off of the collarbone and come down into this sort of shape. And of course, depending on how the arm's moving, I can go and pull it up like this. Sometimes I'll kind of pull it up and around and then just pull it into the deltoid at the side. But what I try and do is make sure that I've got that little crease in there so that it doesn't sort of just become one big flat shape like this. We want it to have this kind of shape here, and then the crease in the middle and where it comes out like that, and it just helps to indicate it a little bit easier. It also helps me too, so if I go and draw another one again, pull the neck in too. If I want to go and pull an arm, say we'll have it up like this, and then we'll have another one going up this way, we can pull the shoulder up that way, draw those in, and pull this down the side. Those moving about a bit. I can go and draw pecs in like this. Pull them around, I can let them be in that kind of space, and then I can go and almost draw the arms kind of separately. So I'm understanding the relation between the deltoids and the pecs, but it's kind of letting me keep them as separate things. And like I mentioned before, don't forget to move the trapezius around if you have to, depending on how the arms are moving, like that. And if I just go and draw one last one in, essentially what I'm doing is trying to keep this basic kind of cape shape that we've got like this. Pull it around like this, but I am just putting in those little dividing lines at the side so that we maintain that shape there. But essentially, it's still the same kind of shape that we've got. Okay, so now let's move on to the hips. So you can see that I've defined my angle across there, like that. And then we've got the curve of the hips around here, where the iliac crest is. And then I've gone and kind of defined them just around here into a bit more of a chunk, kind of where the butt comes around there. But we've also got this sort of curve at the top, and then where it comes down into the butt and the crotch and everything down there. So what have we got going on there? Let's go down to a fresh piece here. Now, as I've done in my other videos, like I said, what I do is kind of line up where those iliac crests are, and where we can just about see them kind of poking out, like on the reference here, we can see where they come forward and make a big point here. So they come around and there's a point where it kind of comes back and drops off like this, and that's where there's a lot of muscle attachments for the legs. So I tend to block in that sort of curve and then bring it down into a butt shape like this. Sometimes I will go and just bring it down and kind of make it look like a pair of pants like that, which I find helps quite a lot in sort of reading it as a 3D thing. So I'm just going to go and draw another one by here. We're going to bring it around like that, and I'm just going to turn it into kind of a pair of pants like this. We've got those crests by there, and pull it down just into a pair of pants. Pull it down and turn it into a pair of pants. What I sometimes do is sort of block it out like that and bring it around into the butt as well, so that we've got the butt in there like that. But if we go and look at the muscles on this dude, what I can do is change it over to the muscle version. Then you should be able to see along here there's just a bit of a white line in there, and that is where the crest is. So that's this part that's coming around here. Let's do that in pink. Got that section around there, and that's, you know, there's not any kind of muscle attachments right onto the edge of it, so we can see it clearly like that. On this other side, it's by here. So then what's this bump above it? So we've got this bit of the hip that's sticking out there, and we got this bump above it. So what's the bump? That is a big chunk of muscle that's coming around from the back and around to the front, called the flank pad. So that leaves us with a little bit that kind of sticks out like that, that sits just above where those iliac crests hang about. And then we have another little bit of a bump in between here, a little bit of a bump there, and then we have the butt behind that. So what we've kind of got is like one bump here, and then the butt. Center of the tum down here. Let's go and block the center of the tum in like this. So we've got this flank pad that comes around from the back like that and gives us that silhouette around the edge. And then we've got this line here. That is the gluteus medius that's coming around the side and just creating a little bit of a bump around there. And then gluteus maximus with the butt. It's coming around that way. And then in that, around here, we have the leg. I'm going to pull down at the crotch on it. On the other side, I'm going to pull down this other leg. Another nice little note for you guys is that where we have the top of these flank pads here is about where the waist is, once it tapers up and off of those and then goes back upwards like this. Just in that centre bit where the waist is where the tummy button hangs about. So if I just grab him here and twist him around to the side, same silhouette that's popping up here, and also this second little bump here, just in the space between there and where the leg starts. So if we go and draw him from this angle, I'm going to go and draw my hips back in. They're going to line up like this. Just draw them in quickly like this. We're at the top of the iliac crests there where they sort of end. Pull it around and sort of give him a butt. Give him a butt like this. I'm going to pull it down so it's just more like a pair of pants. And we're going to have this flank pad that comes around there and joins up to that iliac crest. And we're going to have a little tiny bit of that gluteus medius there. And then we're going to have all these muscles coming down from that iliac crest and into the leg, which we're going to go and have a look at in a minute. It's just drawing as abdominal muscles as well, and let's also give a little bit of indication on this side. As it gets further towards his back, it's going to soften out just a little bit, and then down to his butt, and let's stick his leg on while we're there. So we've got that flank pad around there, and then we've got the iliac crest around that way for it to attach onto. A little bit of that gluteus medius coming around there, and then we've got the butt. So we've sort of got a little bit of kind of interweaving of these curves there. We've got the flank pad there, and then the gluteus medius, and then the butt behind it. So we end up with that kind of shape. And like I say, it does vary a little bit depending on what angle you're looking for, but that's basically the kind of shape that you're going to end up with around the sides, like this. Lastly, with this one, let's have a look at the abdominal muscles. So, I'm going to draw my shape out again, like this. We're going to have the rib cage come around this way like that. I'm going to indicate that like this. And just around the top of the body, and then pecs. Put on by there, separate them out like that, and also put some deltoids on, like that, there we go. And I'm going to pull it down to around where I can put my hips in, like this. I can put in our gluteus medius, and then maximus behind that. So we've got the hips and the butt. Reduce that butt a little bit, it's looking a bit ladylike. And then what I'll do sometimes is kind of pull these shapes down just into the crotch from where we've got the ends of those iliac crests there as well. I'm just going to plonk some legs in on the top like this. And then we already know that they start just kind of inside of where the nips are, like that. So I'm going to pull those down like that, and we pull down into the crotch like this, like we can see on the reference. Now, if we look at these, this middle crease here, where we've got this six pack, this middle crease hangs about just around where the bottom of the ribs are. So we know where to put that in already. We can go and put that in there. We can go and draw our midline down it as well if we want to, like this. We want to be aware also of where this thoracic arch is here, so we want it to come a little bit over that down here. And then we know, like we mentioned before, that if I go and find where that waist is there, just above where we've got this flank pad that comes down here, where it gets to its thinnest there, we're going to have the tummy button, and that's also going to give us where we've got this last little crease there, and then the last one at the top, just below thoracic arch there. So that gives us where all of those are. And like I say, I like to kind of pull it around and down like this, or sometimes from the top of those iliac crests like that, so that we get that. Just twist them around a little bit so that we get that really distinctive kind of V shape that you get on males, like that comes just open around the flank pad like this, so that that's defined, and then we pull it down like that. Sometimes I'll go and define it around the flank pad like that also, just so it shows it a little bit stronger into this kind of V shape and down to the crotch. Like I said, we have that lining up with the bottom of the ribs. That's just below the thoracic arch, that one, and that one is at the waist. Pull those around and label them. Another thing with these on the abdominal muscles is that that is also where your tummy is going to crease if you kind of bend over. So let's kind of crease them up like this. So we're going to get a crease around the waist here. we're going to get one just underneath the ribs, and we're also going to get one up here. Give him some pecs like that, and then we're going to get these creases. I pull those hips forward to around here. We're going to get those creases where we see those in the abdominal muscles. Like so. Okay, so now that we've done the front muscles, let's go and get a different model. Let's turn this guy around and have a look at the back of him. I'm gonna do the same with this fella, so let's start by plonking his head in, like this, at the right kind of angle. Plonk in the angle of his shoulders, which is just slightly sloping off this way. And then I can do what I mentioned earlier, which is kind of lock in like this, but also kind of pay attention to where his rib cage is going to be. On this one, he's in a little bit of a softer pose, so his trapezius there is not quite going to move as much as on the last dude. Pull his arm down there, we've got his chest come around here. This is going to come down and soften out. Let's go and put in the midline just down the centre of his back here. You can also go and add in his hips here, which aren't at too much of an angle. I know his hips are there, so I can go and stick the flank pad in just by there and give us that first little bump on him. If I draw my hips in like this, I can kind of calculate where his butt's going to go. That comes down and around that way. A little bit of indication there. Shoulder pads moving about. And there. Down and draw his arm in. And we're going to do the same on this side with his other arm. Pull it down to here. And we'll be having a look at the arms as well in a minute. You can see a little bit of his pec just behind there. Bottom of his rib cage there, into those flank pads. Got the gluteus medius coming down just in that mid ground there, and then we're going to work down into his legs here like this. Pull those down. We're going to mark out where his feet need to go like this. Start with the other leg, pull that down, stick his knee in, his other leg here. And then we're gonna give him some feet. Okay, and there we go, we've got our next dude. So let's go and have a look at how I've put him together. Now, we can notice pretty quickly that what I've done on this guy, like I mentioned when I was drawing him, is that I've gone and done this kind of circle shape as well here. Now, it's a little bit easier to see on this guy, where that trapezius at the top is curving that all the way around, down to the bottom of where his rib cage is, around here. So we can see that really clearly in that trapezius by there. We can see kind of how it splits as well and comes onto his shoulder blades. And around, kind of down like this, to the bottom of where his ribs are, and we can see again how that kind of comes down this way, and we get that slight little drop off just at the end of where his rib cage is. If I just turn this guy to the muscle model as well, and if I start to kind of turn him around a little bit as well, and we can just look at the front too, we start to see that if I zoom in, this section here that is making it round, especially on the front version, is this muscle that's coming around from the back and curving up to underneath the armpit. So if I just turn him round again, we start to see the rest of it around here that is defining it, and how it's just covering the bottom end of where the shoulder blades are. So see how that is what's coming around and causing us to end up with that big curved shape around this chunk. So we've got the trapezius at the top that's giving us that curved shape, and then this latissimus dorsi on either side that's bringing it and curving it around that side as well and giving it that extra chunk just outside of the rib cage. And then as it kind of tapers off towards the bottom, we do get to see a little bit where that rib cage is. So let's go and chunk that in. Put some arms on this one, and then we can note in just where that comes upwards. Also got the rest of this trapezius that comes down the middle of the back here, and that latissimus dorsi that just tucks under the arms there. So if we go and grab a colour, then we can start noting out this piece around here that's causing it to curve so much is that it's coming up that way. Easiest muscles either side. Note down this latissimus dorsi that's giving us this nice curve around here, and also that trapezius at the top. They both kind of join together in making this big swoopy circle. And if I just go and draw another one as well, some deltoids, then if I go and pull this down like this, pull it down ways, then we can see that this latissimus dorsi comes around and down and joins onto the back of the curve of these hips. So if I stick those in, it's going to come down and join up down there at the sides, and then we have the waist along here, just where it kind of ends, and again sort of at the bottom of the ribs there. Have it coming inwards after that, and then it turns into a flank pad that's coming down and around this way and is going to swing around like we saw it on the front version as well. So we have those flank pads coming out and around and through to the front, where they're going to join right at the ends of those iliac crests at the front. We can see from the back as well, just around here we can see the attachment for where the gluteus medius is. So we don't have any attachment again, just around this crest on the hips. We do have gluteus medius, comes down, brings into the leg, and also the gluteus maximus here attaches just a little bit further along, and that gives us where the butt is. So where the butt is, we can also see here there's a little bit of that gluteus medius just on this side as well that's going to bump out like that, and then go down into the legs, and also on that side as well. You can mark out that as well, gluteus medius there, and on that side. And then here we're starting to see that one bump and then two bumps, and then instead of seeing the butt, because it's more towards the back that we're facing it, we're going to get the bump for the leg. Another thing I just want to indicate on this guy as well is where we have the spaces that are a little bit more tendinous up to the top and the bottom here. So we've got this piece up the top here on the trapezius, where if you poke it, you probably feel your spine kind of bumpy up there, and that's because the muscle kind of sits to either side of that sort of diamond shape. And let's switch him over to this version and just twist him around a little bit. You can't see it that clearly on him, but you can see there's like a little bit of a kind of divot around there where it's not quite as muscly, just in that little space, so I'm going to indicate that as well. And we've also got it down the bottom here, if you guys saw it when I had the muscle version on, then it's a lot less chunky around here, and we've got these little indications of that shape there, just down the bottom like that. So we end up with these little creases along there, either side of the spine. And they can usually kind of come down into little dimples just above the butt like that occasionally. Right, I'm just going to turn the muscle version back on, and we're going to do one more this kind of direction. Easiest coming and wrapping around there. We've got his arm coming out this way, coming around on his back. We're also going to end up with like a little bit of a dint just where the ends of the shoulder blades are going to stick out just a tiny little bit. And I'm going to go and draw a bit of the front of him on. I'm going to pull this down, start marking in where that trapezius is, so you can bring it down the back of him like this, along the midline, pull it down like that. We're going to have those little kind of divots around there. Gets a bit more tenderness. We might be able to see just a tiny bit of that flank pad at this angle. And if I pull the front down this way, we're going to be able to see this latissimus dorsi come around this way, going on to where we've got those hips. Going to get that little bit of flank pad that's coming around the front there too, like that. See that as it's coming around from the back that way. And then we're going to get, again, this little bump here. We're going to have the butt joining onto his hips there. This, and then that's going to come down into the legs, and we can pull that latissimus dorsi from underneath his arm and up to join up that trapezius there, just the top of his shoulder blade around that way. So we can see on this one how that latissimus dorsi comes and wraps around that way. And we also have those little bits of flank pad there. See how it kind of smooths out the back as well, apart from where we have that little bit of a dint for where the shoulder blade is. The last thing I want to look at before we move on is just around the top of the leg and how that's going to carry into when we look at the leg in full. So what we've got around here, you can see we've got this gluteus medius just around here, and then we've also got the gluteus maximus of the butt. But then we've got this piece here that comes down and starts to carry on down the leg, down the side here, and that goes into the iliotibial band. That's going to join to the leg a little bit further down. So let's go and do some sketching. So as we looked at, we've got this crest of the pelvis here, like that. Kind of pull it down into pants like that, and then we've got everything that's going to attach to that. We've got, of course, the flank pad hangs around just above it like that and attaches to it, and then it comes down like this with the gluteus medius and then the gluteus maximus of the buttock like that. See a little bit of that gluteus medius just on the other side there. And as this comes down, we've also got this that connects at the top, and it's called the tensor fasciae latae. I think, I'm not exactly sure how to say that, but it comes down into this iliotibial band. It comes down like this, and that's going to be where the start of our leg is, and we can start to see how a lot of that stuff is connecting up with the crest on the pelvis. That will pull down into the leg, which we're going to go to have a look at in a minute. Now let's move on to the next one. We're going to have a look at the arms, and I think this guy is a good example of what I'm going to be talking about with the arms. So let's start again by going and drawing him in. Just going to draw his head in first. A little bit of swooshy hair just to give it a bit of movement. Pull his neck down this way, and then his body comes at this angle. Wrap it down and around this way, and then his hips go in more at this angle behind those, so we're just going to overlap that to make it a little bit easier to draw. Like that. His leg's going to come forward and up this way. Shoulder comes down and around this way. Neck coming down that way, along here. Draw in that little seam there that I mentioned before, just in between those deltoids and his pecs. The side of that latissimus dorsi coming around there. Got a little bit. It's going to pull around his hips there. It's taking out where his butt is. His crotch comes down by there. Pull his leg out this way. Draw this line in, where his other leg's going to be. It's going to come up that way there, this, and back down and around that way. Come down his foot by there. Let's go and stick this chunk of his arm in here. It's going to line up that kind of angle there, and then his forearm by here. Lines up a bit more towards that way. His hand by there. A little bit more indication. His chest around here. His ankles in, and his other foot by here. And I'm going to pull up deltoid in like this. Bicep and tricep, and then we're going to pull down his forearm there, and put it off just a little bit closer there, and then add his hand in. Okay, so now that we've done this guy as well, let's go and have a look at his arms. I'm going to do kind of the front of the arms, like this, so we're going to go over these bits around here at the top, and down into the forearm. So let's go and draw those and have a look at why I've drawn them in the shapes that I have. We know we have the trapezius coming down like this, collarbone there, and then underneath we know we've got the arm bone that's going to be in here. We know that that comes down to the bottom of the rib cage here, so it's going to be about that big. Draw his chest on, just like this. We've also got that separation that I put in there as well. And then we can start to go and draw the deltoid in. You know, that comes up and around like this. We're going to end up with a little bump around there, just around where the top of the bone that's coming from the shoulder blade at the back is. And then it's going to come over and around like this and down. And then at the front we have the muscles of the biceps. So that comes out from under here and down like this, and around this section we also have a little muscle kind of in the center there as well. And then at the back we have the trapezius, not the trapezius, the triceps, sorry. Now when these get down to the bottom of the arm, what happens is this bicep comes down and joins onto those bones down there. We have a muscle that comes from behind that bicep and curves around like this to the thumb side. And then we have more down this side, and it all tapers off down to the wrist. So we end up with a shape like this at the top. We have this deltoid that comes around and inserts itself in between these muscles here, in between the bicep, the brachialis, and then the tricep at the back. So that slots in there, and then we have the bicep come down this way, and the tricep behind, and then we have this piece here, the brachioradialis, that comes out on this side and down that way, and then down here. So we end up with a shape sort of like this, and we end up, if we simplify it down again, with a shape that's a bit more along these lines. And we can see, if I just go back over to mine, you should be able to see how I've got that insertion of the deltoid there, bicep and everything that comes down this way, and the insertion of that brachioradialis, how everything there is around that way. So it's sort of tiered like that, and everything slots into each other. with this middle piece too. I'm just going to go and draw that deltoid again. If I go and draw on bicep and the tricep, and if I kind of separate them into a 3D shape like this, so it's a little joint like that, and then I also have the corresponding shape like this that turns into the forearm, and those sort of slot into each other and join up so that we get this shape. That helps you guys understand it a little bit better. But that's how I tend to think about it, so this can kind of move up and down on this piece above it here. And I'll go into a little bit more detail with the back side of this shape once we look at the back of the arms with a different version as well. But if I'm struggling with the shape, that usually helps me to figure it out. So for example, if I go and draw this guy's arm here again, let's zoom in on it a little bit. And let's bring up the muscle version. You can see that I'm drawing this here, and then there's that insertion by there. Pull these around like this. We end up with those insertions down on those pieces, and then we have this insertion of that brachioradialis in the middle there, and that pulls around and down into that kind of shape. So it's sort of the way that you get the shape around a tennis ball, where it's like that sort of shape on either side, and both of those slot into each other to make the shape that we're trying to get. And that's kind of a way I like to simplify it down, just for when I'm drawing arms quite quickly. If we go and look at this arm on this reference as well with all the muscles, we can see how we've got this curve and it inserts there, and then this comes down and inserts in there, in here, and then we can see how we get this brachioradialis coming down this way, round to the side with the thumb, and creating that kind of heart shape in the middle, where we've got that insertion just in between, and we don't really need to put too much detail into the extensors and the flexors on the arms so that make our fingers move about. So I usually just simplify those down and mostly kind of concentrate on the shape that we get from this curve coming around there from the brachioradialis, and then simplify everything else down into a swoosh. And if we want to go and work on it later and make it more detailed, turn it into a bigger illustration, then we can go and add any other little details into it later. But I don't like to do too much on that when I'm doing figure drawing like this, because I just end up picking at it too much. For some different angles on the arms as well, let's just have a quick look at this model and draw his arm from the side and just talk a little bit about how it kind of squashes up this. So I'm going to draw that deltoid in, got the insertion there, I'm going to pull it down like this, and then we're going to get around here where this brachioradialis comes from, in between there. It's going to pull around and create a little bit of a chunk around here. You can see that little bit of sort of fat around there, where it's just bulging out a little bit because of how all this skin is compressed. And then his arm comes up this way, as this does. And then we've got our elbow by here, and then down this way. We're also going to have a little bit of an indication of where the ulna is there, coming from the elbow and down to where that bump on his wrist is. I'm going to chunk out that bicep a little bit more by there. But when we get this kind of movement going on, we get quite a lot of squash around here, and it's mainly this brachioradialis that we have around here that squashes up and gives us that squishy curve around there, and also this squashing on the inside of this shape here. And lastly, let's just have a look at some arms from the back on this different model. Now, like I mentioned before, where we've got these kind of interlocking shapes, and it's kind of the same on the front and the back. I'm just going to draw out this dude's arm here. So, just draw his body in by the side there, and then I'm going to draw the deltoid on. I'm going to draw the tricep coming out from the back here, and it's going to squidge up a little bit just onto his back there. Pull that around and down to his elbow. Got that brachioradialis there. The rest of the ulna that comes down from the elbow this way, like that, and down to his hand here. Now, if I go and turn the muscle model onto this guy, and if I just rotate him a little bit, you can see on the tricep at the back here, there's this sort of tendinous bit in the middle. Remember, like when we looked at the bottom of the back here, and also the top, just in between the trapezius there, it's sort of the same in that there's not a whole lot of sort of muscle in that area, it's all around it. So when we draw the back of the arm, we're going to have back of the deltoid there, and then we're going to have tricep coming out from in between it. But because of this little gap in the middle, and where it comes down to the bone, where it's not padded out, it's just the bone, and it's going to come down like this, and we're going to end up with that kind of shape again, around where the end of the elbow is, on the top of the ulna, and all of this area in here is just kind of tendinous. We've got more of the muscle here, which is why I have it more bulky at the top and then taper it out towards the bottom. Now, it is obviously going to be a little bit more kind of chunky at the sides with all of the biceps and everything that we're going to be able to see a little bit of just to the side there. But what I tend to do is bulk this out first, just to get that sort of shape down, and then I will pull down from it like this, and pull down the rest of the arm. Like I mentioned, we want that brachioradialis that's going to come from in between the tricep and the bicep that will be at the front, and that wants to pull around and down like that. And without putting in too much detail and picking out every single muscle, just by doing that shape, it lets me go and plonk a shape in like this really quick and just draw myself a super duper quick arm that has quite a lot of movement in. And like I say, I can always go back later if I want to actually use the pose and go and start bulking things out a little bit more and cleaning it up like this. I can go and add the rest of the ulnar in there. You know, it's easy to just go back to it. And lastly, before we move on to doing legs, let's just go and do one from the side. So I'm going to draw in my deltoid again. Got my bicep there, my tricep that comes from the back and it's chunkier at the top and then tapers off towards the bottom where we've got our ulnar or our elbow. It's going to come down that way. It's going to scrunch it up a little bit like that. We've got our brachioradialis that's creating this little chunk around here. Comes and sits inside that area, and then down to the wrist here, because this brachioradialis is connecting up on the thumb side. This thumb is going to be there, and there's his hand. Then if I just go over that again, we can start to see how I've got those sections that I mentioned before that slot together like that. Something else that I just want to mention quickly as well is that when you're drawing these deltoids, they tend more out towards the sides like this, but when you're drawing biceps and triceps, they will tend more forward like this. So we've got sort of opposite directions that they're going in. The brachioradialis kind of moves around quite a lot, but when we're looking at just the deltoids at the top here, and also these biceps and triceps, and you're going to end up with more of a kind of outways for these at the top, and then sideways in the kind of opposing way for those at the side. You do get a little bit more of an outways tendency around here as well, just because we've got that chunk from the elbow and the end of the top piece of the arm, where it's going to come kind of more outways like this and be a little bit wider in that middle bit, like I've been mentioning on these bits here. So it's going to be a little bit wider just in those middle bits, and then thin down for the rest of it, just because we've got that big bone in the middle that splays out in the middle, and then the elbow that sits inside of it. So there's a few different little rhythms and flows kind of going on within the shapes of the arms. And now we've done everything else, let's go and have a look at some legs. So I'm going to draw this dude for the legs because he's got some nice wibbly wobbly legs for us to have a look at. Let's draw his face on for a start, like I usually do. Block that out in the usual way that I block heads out. His neck down that way. We've got this angle. His shoulders, we're going to get a little bit of overlapping with his face by there. With his trapezius around his neck. And then let's pull the rest of him down this way to that kind of shape there. We've got his ribs cage on there, his pecs right here. His neck wants to come down a little bit. There's little muscles around it there. Pull up his collarbones like that. Start popping his arm in there. Pull this one around over here too. Separate out his pecs a little bit in a second. His arms around there. Use that same shape that we looked at before, like this. So let's see that brachioradialis come around that way. Pull it down there just for now. Not gonna add his hand in yet. His pecs up and around like this. Chunk them out in that corner there, wrap around his deltoid, and coming back a little bit more there, so that's going to squidge down a bit. Rest of his arm down and around this way, give him a little bit more hair on the top of his head, bulk that out. Define that a little bit more. I'm also going to put in that crease by there, and then let's put the hips in there, lining up around where his elbow is by here, that bit where his ribs just kind of drop off, abdominal muscles that come down this way and kind of curve up a little bit that way. We want to curve inwards and downwards a bit by there. Got his waist by there, that's wrapping around there, next little crease there, and then another one just by there. Just below that thoracic arch that's hanging about there. His hips down at the side over here as well. Around, we've got that gluteus medius at the side. And then I'm going to start pulling his legs out and down like this. His knee. And pull the rest of his leg down over there. And start that way. Crease it up. His knee by there. Pull this leg over there. Put in. Muscles by there. We're going to have his knee. I'm going to give him his foot over here, rest of this leg at the front, the foot by there, legs come forward a little bit too far, a bit shorter there, it shouldn't be coming out quite as far. Let's give him some hands as well, just to finish it off. Okay, so there we go, we've got our next fella, and let's go and have a look at the muscle version of him now and check out his legs. Now the first thing I want to have a look at is this line that I've indicated just down here, which if we look over here on the reference we can see is just a big piece of shin bone on both of these. So where I'm pulling that down and defining it is me saying, right, there's a big shin bone would be visible in here and also on this side here, and there's a few little muscles hanging around the front here, but the main thing that's going to pop out is going to be this big old shape around the back here. It's creating those big curves there. So let's go and draw those over here. So if I draw the leg, as he's got it sticking out by there. This, we're going to put his knee on by there. And we're going to pull it down like this, draw that shin bone in there. Pull it down like this, a bit of an ankle there, and a foot as well. Then this piece here is what's going to come down into the shin bone, and then everything else sits around that shape that is going to be showing. Now this big chunk at the back is called the gastrocnemius, and if I go and draw it from the back leg and then draw this in, what it does is it slots into this shape behind and attaches onto the top part of leg bone, the femur at the top. So it attaches onto that femur and it comes down and it kind of splits into two, and then we end up similarly to what we had on the back of the arm with the tricep coming down to the elbow. It gets a little bit tenderness in the middle and it comes down like this to the heel. And what we see from the front is the way that it bulges out up the top like that. So in the same way that I was going and defining that tricep on the back of the arm, I do the same with defining this gastrocnemius and putting in that big curve all the way down to the heel. While I'm mentioning these as well, if this is the inside of the leg and this is the outside, there is one side that's a little bit lower than the other, and it tends to be lower on the inside than it is on the outside, so we get that sort of shift in where we have highest points on the outside of those curves. And if I swing him around this way, then we can see that here as well, that it's higher on the outside and lower on the inner side. We swing him around that way as well, we should be able to see that gastrocnemius up in there, and also that tenderness bit coming down here, and how it splits into those two segments like that down the middle, and then carries on with that tenderness strip down there. And like I said, there are more muscles that come down the side like this, but when I'm doing figure drawing, I don't tend to put too much emphasis on those, because what I'm trying to get is just that overall big curve that we have with that shape of the gastrocnemius at the top, and that we usually have popping out at the side like that, depending on the angle. Now if we swap him back around again, let's go and get a different colour for looking at the tops of the legs. As I mentioned before, we've got that little bit of the gluteus medius hanging about there, just as that little lump. His butt's going to be behind there too on the drawing that we've done. And from that gluteus medius we get this big band that comes down the side and comes and joins up down here and swings itself round underneath and onto the kneecap here. And we have the muscle that links to that up the top that is just a little bit in front of the gluteus medius, and in the same kind of place that that comes from as well, we get another muscle called the sartorius that swings around and down like this, comes over this way around this curve that we get here, and joins up down on the shin bone down there. Just gonna pull it around on this side as well, down onto the shin bone there. In this section here, what we have is a femur down this chunk of the leg in here, and then we have from the bottom of the pubic arches down here all these muscles that come down from it this way and fill in this space between that sartorius. So that leaves us with this curve that we get. And then in the center we have a group of 3 muscles. So we've got one on the top called the rectus femoris, like this. So it's on the top there, and then we have 2, one either side, the inner one being the vastus medialis and the outer one being the vastus lateralis. So now let's go and do some scribbling and have a look at that little collection of muscles that we've just looked at there. Let's turn this dude around a little bit again. Okay, so let's go and draw his leg from this angle. So we've got the hips there, that kind of angle like this. Draw them in quickly like that, and then we've got his leg coming around here, so we've got that vastus medialis in the middle. We've got the sartorius that's going to come around from up here, down and around, and it's going to hook down underneath his knee into where his shin bone is. It's going to come outways with that gastrocnemius around there, and also on that outer side where it's going to be a little bit higher up. We're going to have these two muscles that are a bit more developed there, and that's going to give us that little crease that I put on the other versions. And we're also going to have that rectus femoris in the middle like that. It's a bit more chunked out. And then we're going to have the iliotibial band, which comes around here, wraps around and sits just on the bottom there of the kneecap, and then we can add in all the rest of the muscles around the butt that we looked at before. So you can see with the way that this sartorius on the inner side comes out and around and swings down like this, it holds it all together with these muscles on the top of the leg, comes around and gives us this nice curve around that area as it comes down and joins up and onto that shin bone there. Let's also have a look at drawing this opposite leg from this angle. So draw those hips in like this. I'm going to keep this a little bit smaller so that he fits in. Got that flank pad there, a little bit of that gluteus medius by there, and that comes and wraps around this way. His knee is facing a little bit more towards that way. So that's all wrapping around the side. We've got the sartorius that comes from the same place and comes and wraps around this side of the leg, down and onto that shin bone, just going that way. Get that gastrocnemius by there, that's going to go down that way, foreshorten like that. And then foot by there. And we're going to have all of these muscles that come up to the pubic arch by there, creating that curve there. Then we've got that curve down there from the sartorius, those from the gastrocnemius there, and then we're going to have a little bit more chunk in the top middle of his leg from the rectus femoris in the middle, vastus lateralis on the outer side, and the vastus medialis here in the middle. So we've got this curve in here. Again, these are a chunk of muscles that I don't really put too much detail into because you can block them out into just this kind of triangular shape that's coming from the top of the iliac crest here and joining up down at the pubic arches at the bottom, and they just come straight down onto the femur there. Then we have this second curve here. That is from the sartorius as it swings around and down there onto the shin. This curve, the gastrocnemius. We've got that flank pad there that we've already looked at in the other ones. Got that gluteus medius there, and then over here, got kneecap or patella there, and then we've got this big curve, which you can kind of simplify down into just one big curve if you want, of the top leg muscles in their little group of three, and this little kind of crease you get with them just above where the kneecap is there. Lastly, let's turn this dude around again and let's go and have a look at the back of his leg here around the top. So let's go and draw that out. Okay, so we've got our hips here, like this, foot there, let's got the side here, got that band coming down the side, over this way, got that curve down that way from the inner thigh muscles. We've also got this little bit of a lump down here from where that sartorius is swinging about, and we're going to get a little bit of fat around that bit as well. So we're going to have that chunk as well as that chunk by there. And if you guys can see on here, there's a few little muscles here that just separate like this. There's two of them that come down, they split down the middle, and then they go either side of where this gastrocnemius is going to go inwards. So we're going to get a split down the back middle, and then an opening up like that, so that that gastrocnemius can fit inside of that space, like that. So in a way it's kind of similar to when we were doing the arms, and we've got all these little insertions and they give us these different shapes that we can use, like this. I'm going to chunk out the front of that a little bit, and then we can give them a bit of a foot by here too. I'm going to mark out that little tendinous bit down there as well. You guys should be able to see this band down the side as well. That's going to come a little bit more forward so it can swing round and join onto the patella at the front. Of course we've got that butt there, that little butt there. So if I just go and draw some in the way that I would draw them quickly with a figure drawing, then if I go and do this, I can mark out that for the top. I can go and put the back in like this, and then I'd have gastrocnemius in at the front. I'd taper it down like I would with the triceps, taper it down like that, and then the butt like that. I might as well also kind of sometimes go and add in this band down the centre when you can see it just a little bit indicated, depending on how much muscle bulk someone's got, just a little bit down the middle. Underneath that as well, we also have a little bit of the vastus lateralis that sits kind of underneath it, so the band more like this way, and we get a little bit of that coming through at the side. It sort of sits underneath it, or the band sits on top of it. So you would be able to see a little bit of it, and that's what gives us that kind of curve on the top there, or when we see from the side. You can see as well, I'm also using this sort of triangle here in this shape, and then that little curve where the sartorius comes around. So I've got that curve, or that kind of triangle shape for those inner thigh muscles, and then I've got that sartorius shape by there, and my vastus lateralis at the side. Got our insertion at the back for the gastrocnemius, and that comes out and around and down. And in the same way that I usually draw elbows, sometimes I will do it with legs as well. So I'll come down like this, and maybe I'll like block the knee in like that just to make it a bit easier. And then we'll block that curve in, and then I'll block the curve of the butt. And then the bottoms of the legs like this, the bottoms of the legs like this, and I will put in shin bone as well, sometimes as well. So you can see how I kind of put in all those things together and simplify them, fine them down, not focusing on anything like too complex. I can go and put everything together to be able to draw it quite quickly like that and come up with a shape that gives me enough information to work from and make it look like a human figure. Since I know where I'm trying to put all those muscles down, I know where they all sit, I know what kind of shapes they should be making. So every curve that I'm drawing is there for a reason. Every curve that I'm drawing is informed by what the muscles are underneath. Let's draw one from the back as well. Let's just draw a regular kind of standing one with the butt and everything. Something else I do want to mention as well, in a second, we've got that kind of triangle there, we have it come out that way, is that the widest point is not where the hips are. The hips will be up here, but the widest point is actually where we have the top of the femur. So we have the great truncator of it that comes down like this, and then it comes down this way. So that is the furthest bit out that you will get around the sides of the hips or on the bottom half of the body. I can put my insertion in here of the gastrocnemius. I can pull that down there, make sure that this on the inside is lower than on the outside, so we get that angle like that, and then I can pull it down to the heel there. It gets a little bit more tenderness towards the bottom, and then some ankles and a foot, and there we go, we've got a leg. And with that, we have finished the entire sheet. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this helped. If it did, give us a like, share if you think it'll help someone else, and subscribe for new videos on Fridays. There'll be links down in the description to everywhere that I post stuff, as well as where you can get prints of things that I've already drawn and my commission information. Thanks to FlGURE for sponsoring this video and my other set of figure drawing ones, which I will put a link to the playlist of for you guys now. Like I mentioned at the start as well, there is a link down in the description to FlGURE, as well as the page for this tutorial on FlGURE, where you can get all of these resources from the tutorial, as well as all of the models that I've used in it. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.